Good morning, everybody, and thank you all for joining us today. My name is Gustavo Medina. I'm the political director for SEIU-UHW. Dialysis workers in California are unionizing to improve their working conditions and the quality of care for dialysis patients. Employers have reacted with illegal firings, threats, and refusals to bargain in good faith. The corporations who run the dialysis industry hold large contracts with the federal government, but they put profits before patients and the frontline workers who care for them. Today, you'll hear from workers on the front lines of dialysis care. You'll also hear from experts and patients who are here on their own behalf and have important insights to contribute to this discussion. Before we get to our speakers, some quick background points on the campaign. For nearly 8 years, dialysis caregivers and their patients have been working together to reform the industry. Together, they've worked to expose the industry and hold them accountable with legislators and regulators, and taken ballot measures to the voters to rein in corporate greed. But chronic understaffing and corner cutting by dialysis corporations has persisted. Dialysis caregivers, some who make as little as $17 an hour, are now fighting for a contract to fix the care conditions that they feel endanger caregivers and their patients. Instead of taking responsibility to make improvements, dialysis corporations have spent a lot of money fighting against dialysis caregivers, patients, and their family members. They have fired workers in retaliation for organizing. They have made illegal threats and retaliatory discipline. And they've offered raises to workers at non-union clinics while withholding raises to workers who have unionized. And lastly, they've refused to bargain in good faith and delayed bargaining sessions. In spite of these actions, I'm pleased to report that to date, 730 dialysis caregivers working at 24 clinics and acute care hospitals have voted to form a union with SEIU United Healthcare Workers Reps. Today, you'll hear from 3 of them, as well as one of their patients. But first, please let me welcome a special guest speaker, Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren. Congresswoman Lofgren has been a Democratic member of the United States House of Representatives since 1995. She represents the 18th District of California, which serves communities in Monterey, San Benito, Santa Clara, and Santa Cruz counties. She's the elected chair of the California Democratic Congressional Delegation. It is the most diverse delegation in the House and outnumbers all other House delegations. Congresswoman Lofgren.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for including me today, and I want to thank all the caregivers who are here. The work that you do is quite literally life-saving. And for Californians with kidney disease, it's essential to have regular, reliable dialysis care, which you know so well. And yet what these workers do to provide this vital treatment has been rewarded with overwork and underpay. These massive companies have not bargained in good faith, and that's simply wrong. Not just wrong for these hardworking individuals, but for their patients, because a quality workforce is essential for quality care, and you need to treat employees properly so that they can provide the care that's needed. I know from personal experience how important a union is. I grew up in a union family. My dad was recording secretary of his local, and I know that by organizing together, you can get results. So I give you credit for that. Last summer, I wrote to Fresenius Medical Care and Satellite Healthcare expressing concern about the low wages and the understaffing that not only stressed employees, but also threatens quality of service to patients. I never even heard back from those companies. They couldn't even put together some boilerplate language. They just simply ignored us. So in addition to joining workers here today, we will be sending a letter to the VA expressing concern about how workplace issues at these companies threatens to impact patient care that the VA is in charge of. And I have some level of confidence that the VA will be more attentive to the members of Congress than these big corporations were. I just want to say that the California Democratic Congressional Delegation, the biggest in Congress, is on your side. And thank you. Thank you, Gustavo.
And now it's my pleasure to welcome Congressman Adam Schiff, representing the 30th District of California.
Thank you. I'm so delighted to join you and proud that you're here and grateful to you for the hard work you do every day. I want to acknowledge and thank Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren for leading this letter on an issue that is so important to my constituents and all Californians. Access to dialysis is a life and death matter to 1 in 6 veterans diagnosed with kidney failure. Given the critical role that dialysis plays in keeping patients with kidney failure alive, it is a travesty that the healthcare workers who care for our veterans and all of our citizens are underpaid and short-staffed. In a nation as prosperous as the United States of America, it is a moral stain on the country that the quality of life-saving care by dialysis, including for our veterans, can be undermined by corporations who make billions of dollars in profits per year. Greed is literally putting veterans' lives, all of our lives, at stake. It is shameful to put staff and patients at risk just so companies can continue to rake in record profits. Shame on those executives who refuse to give an inch to the hardworking SEIU workers on the front lines of keeping our loved ones healthy. Shame on corporations who put profits ahead of patient safety. Shame on those who say that we can't give our healthcare workers $25 an hour minimum while funneling record profits to shareholders. Our patients, including our veterans, deserve access to high-quality health care, and it is a systemic failure to not ensure that these companies are treating their workers fairly and providing quality, affordable care, especially when they're receiving billions of dollars from taxpayers. It is also critically important to recognize, and I want to thank, organized labor, like SEIU, and the role that you're playing in securing better working conditions for everyone. Failing to ensure safe working conditions at these facilities not only jeopardizes healthcare workers, but also endangers their patients. This is unacceptable. Once again, I want to thank Representative Lofgren, as well as SEIU, for your commitment to providing care for all Americans diagnosed with kidney disease. We will not stop until all healthcare workers are guaranteed fair wages and safe working conditions so they can get back to what matters most, helping patients. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. Next, we're honored to welcome Congresswoman Katie Porter, representing the 47th District.
Good morning, SEIU-UHW here in the Capitol and across California. I'm Congresswoman Katie Porter. I represent Orange County. Taking on greed in the dialysis industry is an issue I began working on in my very first year in Congress. And I am so glad that our movement is growing to fix our broken dialysis system and to hold companies accountable for doing right by their patients. So thank you, Congresswoman Lofgren, SEIU, and others for joining this movement and holding this press conference. Let's name names. DaVita and Fresenius are America's 2 largest dialysis companies. And they have been cheating patients, taxpayers, and workers for far too long. So I am proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with SEIU-UHW, which is a real partner in how we hold big corporations accountable through oversight. Thank you. Thank you for sounding Thank you for sounding the alarm that these two companies, which rake in hundreds of millions in profits each year, are screwing their workers with low wages and understaffing that endangers patients. I want to be crystal clear before DaVita and Fresenius start their excuses about how they can't afford to pay workers fairly. I know they have the money to do it.
So do I.
Because my office investigated these companies back in 2019. What did we investigate them for in our report called Dying on Dialysis? We investigated them for a kickback scheme funding a so-called nonprofit that helped line their own pockets. With the help of SEIU, my office released this report. We uncovered the cozy relationship between these big dialysis providers and the American Kidney Fund, which receives most of its donations from these companies, and then pushed your patients toward private insurance plans that did not act in the patient's best interest, that kept them on dialysis rather than helping them to get the organ donations that they need. These private insurance plans were bad for patients, but they were great for dialysis providers and their bottom line, because private insurance reimbursed at higher rates than Medicare or Medicaid. They juiced their profits literally at the expense of their patients. So when you hear DaVita and Fresenius trying to pit caregivers against patients, that is a tactic straight out of the special interest playbook. Don't believe the BS. As someone who's never taken a dime of corporate PAC money, I'll tell it like it is. These companies are using both their workers and their patients as pawns in service of their bottom lines. And it is on Congress to provide rigorous oversight and to hold these companies accountable for tactics that harm staff and patients alike. So I am proud to have been by your side since my very first term in Congress, leading these efforts, and I am so grateful to every member of SEIU for being a partner. Keep up the fight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Okay, so now we're going to have some workers and patients speak. And first, you're going to hear from Manny Gonzalez, a dialysis worker who has been on the forefront of this fight. Manny?
Good morning, everybody. It's hard to follow this act, but it's inspiring me. So here we go. Manny Gonzalez. I am a dialysis technician in Southern California, Fontana Inland Empire, San Bernardino County. Been doing this for 26 years. I am here with my brothers and sisters in dialysis to bring awareness of the wage problem and short staffing issues that we're having in the dialysis industry. Dialysis is a form of treatment. It's life-saving for our patients that they have to endure 4 hours to 3.5 hours at a time, 3 times a week. And we can't help but to get close to these patients, as treat them as family members, because that's what they represent for us. This is like extended family. When I started in dialysis, the ratio was 3 patients for 1 worker. Over time, the big corporations, DaVita, Fresenius, bought out these private companies, and the ratio quickly went up, 4 to 1, 5 to 1. And there is no ratio, there is no policy for ratio. So sometimes we wind up doing 8 patients to 1, 10 to 1. It just depends on the short staffing. And every patient deserves 100% dedication from all of us. Imagine having a loved one in the dialysis chair and you don't know how their treatment's going to go that day because of the staffing inside the clinics. Another reason why the staffing is so slow, because the wages are so low. People don't want to stay in healthcare, in dialysis. They move on to something else. I, for myself, had to work 18 years, 2 full-time jobs, DaVita and Fresenius, to try and make ends meet. This is difficult for me because out of my 4 kids, I lost those 18 years of watching them grow. Sporting events, school certificates, it was hard. Now I have 2 daughters working in dialysis, and I see the same thing happening. My grandson got an award the other day, holding a certificate, like looking like this in the audience, and I asked him after, what happened? What were you looking for? I was looking for my mom, but she's at work. So it hit home. I saw the reaction of what the kids, the families, what we're putting them through, the sacrifices we make for our coworkers and our patients, and it's time to get these companies to recognize profit over care is not the way to go. I don't have much else to say, but I really appreciate the time, and I thank all of you. Thank you.
Next, we're going to have Unice Cortez speak. She is a registered nurse at DaVita for 40 years. I'm sorry. She's been a registered nurse for over 40 years. She previously worked at DaVita, and now she is at Fresenius. Unice?
Hello, everyone. My name is Unice Cortez. I'm a registered nurse, and I've worked in dialysis for 23 years. That's both, I'm with Fresenius right now, but I used to work in Dallas, Texas for DaVita, and also here in California. And my job as a nurse is one of my jobs, is to take vital signs, patients' vital signs, check their lungs, check for edema or swelling, and just to find out how they're doing and make sure they are stable before technicians put them on the machine. As Manny said, the staffing ratio has changed. Now I feel like I have to be a nurse and a technician at the same time, instead of them providing us with another technician. I've talked to management many times, myself about staffing issues, and it just doesn't, it make promises that never, so it's never changed. It's always lack of staff, and yeah. And my coworker of mine was sick with cancer, but she worked 2 jobs, working for both DaVita and Fresenius, and to work for her kids, 2 kids. And when she died last, I guess, she died last year, back in January, and guess what? There was no replacement until October, so that's like 9 months with that. So, and because of that, we have to work 4 days of 12 hours, or sometimes 5 days. And I've been in a union before, so I know how it is that we feel supported and you have a voice. That people are there to support you, and I'm proud that my clinic was the very first dialysis clinic to be unionized. Okay, but the company tried to persuade us not to be unionized, and the other clinics, they made threats, they made promises, they fired people. Just before we voted, the company, our company, Fresenius, they came to our unit, and the bigwigs, they tried to persuade us not to be unionized. And I cried. I cried in front. I actually said, I cursed them. And I said, where were you when we needed you? Where were you when we needed you? But there's no word that can change my mind about the union. As the union, we support each other. Our patient is behind us. That's the main thing. When we go on bargaining, I always share with my patient what's going on. And they're 100% behind us. And they're so glad that we're unionized. I mean, it's about time.
Yes.
Good morning, and thank you for being here this morning. My name is Carmen Cartagena. I'm a former dialysis patient from Walnut Creek, California. I was on dialysis for 14 years before receiving my kidney June 25th of 2023. Kidney failure can happen to anyone. There are currently over 500,000 Americans on dialysis. Over 500,000. I am proud to support the union and the dialysis teams that kept me safe and alive. Dialysis is a life-saving procedure. It removes your blood from your body, circulates it through a machine, cleans it, and returns it to your body. That puts excessive pressure on your heart. I've lost consciousness from blood pressure dropping. I've had my blood pressure so high one time that they feared I was going to have a stroke. And these are regular incidents that happen in the clinic, not just to myself, but to other patients. And there's a lot worse, of course, but I don't have the time to tell you all the atrocities that do happen. When you're on the machine, anything can happen. Not only does I've already said that part, I'm sorry. The dialysis team literally hold their lives in our hands. You can imagine the type of anxiety that it can cause. I would have to take medication prior to my treatments because I was so anxious, not knowing what to expect or what could happen to me on any given treatment day. The quality of care has greatly diminished, and this is by no means the staff's fault. The fault lies with the corporation's greed that pick profits over patient care. I was fortunate enough to be blessed with a kidney transplant, and though I am no longer on dialysis, I am here today to continue the fight to fix dialysis because I don't want anybody to continue experiencing what I have. Thank you.
Site staffing to cover when we need to take time off or go on vacation. Management does not find coverage despite sufficient notice. For example, I covered for a colleague who went on paternity leave. He works Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and he's a closer and gets off at 10 p.m. I'm an opener on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and my shift starts at 2:30 a.m. So as a result, I work 12 hours, 5 to 6 days a week in a row for 3 months. That is why we go through, because management does not offer any solution. As a veteran, it's hard to see fellow veteran patients in my clinic not getting the proper care due to short staffing issues, and while the company puts profit over patient care. The worst part is these companies are causing all this suffering because of money and taxpayers' money. They take tax dollars and go back to the companies, to the CEO's pockets, so they can keep underpaying us. That is why we are here to ask our legislators to hold these companies accountable. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Our final speaker, Tom Muller, is an investigative journalist whose writing has appeared in The New Yorker, National Geographic, The New York Times Magazine, and The Atlantic. His latest book, How to Make a Killing: Blood, Death, and dollars in American medicine is a sweeping expose of the dialysis industry and is based on 6 years of research. Tom?
Thank you very much, Gustavo, and thank you all for being here. I am, as Gustavo said, I plead guilty. I am an investigative journalist, and I have started learning about dialysis about 6 years ago while I was writing a book about whistleblowing, crisis of conscience. And it wasn't long before I saw that dialysis has more whistleblowers per square inch than any other industry I've run across. Now, why would that be? I think we've heard a few reasons already. A lot of insiders, including SEIU-UHW workers and patients, took big risks to tell me what they know. So thank you all for speaking out, telling me your stories, and sharing them as you are doing here on Capitol Hill today. After 6 years of reporting and research, I recently published this book, as Gustavo said, How to Make a Killing, Blood, Death, and Dollars in American Medicine. Now, you may deduce from the title that the book contains some strong statements about how the industry operates. And I should say that certain large dialysis corporations, Fresenius and Satellite in particular, have vigorously disputed my findings. But I stand by my reporting. I stand by my 6 years of research and interviews, and I encourage you to read the book, weigh its expert voices, sift the 60 pages of source notes at the back, and draw your own conclusions. My book describes a dark turn that dialysis has taken over the last half century. Back in the 1970s, dialysis represented a revolution in healthcare, and America did it better than any other nation on earth. Artificial kidney machines were a miracle cure, among the most advanced, high-tech areas of medicine. And Congress, too, did its part, did its cutting-edge work, forging a visionary piece of legislation in 1972 that guaranteed dialysis treatment for all Americans suffering kidney failure. This made dialysis America's first, and to this day, alas, its only, major Medicare for All program. How times have changed since 1972. Today, dialysis, once so advanced, has become all too often the worst in assembly line, fast food, one-size-fits-all medicine performed not in hospitals, but in malls and business parks. US patients die sooner, yet cost vastly more to treat than in any other developed nation. But the dialysis program is still Medicare for all, so the government, we taxpayers, still foot the bill, which has grown to billions and billions of dollars a year. This tragic decline in dialysis has coincided with the rise of two big, aggressive, rapidly expanding firms, DaVita and Fresenius, that now control about 80% of the market. Their business model, in my view, and the view of many people who have spoken already, all too often puts profits over the well-being of patients and of workers. While writing my book, I interviewed many workers from SEIU and workers and patients across the country. Again and again, I heard the same stories, saw the same patterns. Workers who suffer short staffing, chronically low wages, and high-pressure work environments that sound less like a medical facility than a MASH unit in a war. Patients who receive short, high-speed treatments that damage their hearts. Patients who are involuntarily discharged from their clinics and subsequently blackballed. Patients kept off transplant lists. Patients swept into dialysis before they even needed. And this is not just a California issue. This is a nationwide issue. This is systemic. It's an issue that affects 800,000 Americans with kidney failure, 500,000 of whom are on dialysis at any given time. And as we've said, including upwards of 40,000 veterans receiving dialysis at the VA or through its contractors. Poor dialysis disproportionately harms patients of color. It blights disadvantaged communities across America where dialysis clinics stand along dollar stores, payday loan shops, jack-in-the-box as sentinel activities for a particular kind of neighborhood, a neighborhood where life is very, very hard. This needs to stop. After 6 years of exploring this industry and questioning a host of experts, I'm convinced that we need to return to the original vision of Congress, dialysis as life-saving, cutting-edge medicine, dialysis as a pledge to care well for every highly vulnerable American whose kidneys have failed. Congress has recently begun scrutinizing private equity firms for rolling up entire sectors of medicine and extracting profits at the expense of patients and workers. Well, the dialysis industry is in many ways the original private equity roll-up, a microcosm of financialization and consolidation in American healthcare that's costing us dearly. So my heartfelt thanks go to the members of Congress present here who are starting to take an interest in dialysis, because all of us, patients, workers, taxpayers, deserve better, and the stakes could not be higher. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks to the workers and the patients for sharing their stories. Their stories are powerful. Their stories are real. And thank you to our allies in Congress for joining us today and taking a stand. That concludes our press conference. Thank you for your time.